We're 7 races already into the 2023 F1 season. I don't want to say that we're going to stir up drama with this next question, but I'm just curious, based on the season so far, who do you think's at most risk for losing their seat either before the end of 2023 or heading into the 2024 season based on performance thus far?
I think if you were to look at it objectively so far, two of the three rookies really stand out. Logan Sargent, Nick De Vries, for very different reasons. I think I'd be surprised if Sargent lost his seat this year, but De Vries, as obviously there's been a lot of chatter around him losing his seat. Now, I don't know how accurate those reports were in terms of, it seems like the Daniel Ricciardo part of those reports wasn't true, but I think there is internal pressure on De Vries. He came in with a lot of hype, a lot of expectation, and really is really being shown up by Yuki Tsunoda at the moment. And we know how unforgiving Red Bull can be. So I think De Vries is just kind of an open question mark. Red Bull have Liam Lawson, who's currently racing in Japan, I think, in Super Formula. And there's always been a suggestion they might give him a chance at some point. On the Sargent side, he came in probably a year too early from Formula 3. That was kind of the rap on him. And I just don't think we've seen from Logan that he's kind of really ready for Formula 1. He had that great first lap. He basically had the best first lap a rookie's had for a long time when he kind of, raced through. There was that great onboard of him. But he just doesn't seem to have, what you need in Formula 1. He's made a lot of mistakes. And again, you're always compared to your teammate, and he's looking bad compared to Albon. And I think, we touched on this, didn't we, in the digital show, Katie, that one of the things that Sargent has going for him that I don't think he's lent into is the fact that he's an American driver at a time when Formula 1 has never been more popular in America. He hasn't really embraced that. And we've talked about it before. I'm not comparing Ricciardo and Sargent personality wise, because they're very different ages, but also that they're just very different kind of personalities. But when Ricciardo was struggling at McLaren last year, especially, I think I felt it, and I think Lawrence agreed as well at the time, that because people feel a certain way about Daniel Ricciardo, I think he got an easier run than he would have done than, say, if Lance Stroll. Look at Lance Stroll. He's had 4 or 5 bad or not great performances, and people are already saying he's holding that team back. They've got to get rid of him, blah, blah, blah. It's because people have a certain opinion of Lance Stroll. Ricciardo, even at the end of last year, he had one moderately good performance in Mexico, and everyone was saying, look, he's still as good as ever. And it was like, well, it was okay. It was one good result in a really bad season. And I think Sargent just really hasn't done, especially as a rookie, you've got to kind of come in and make yourself marketable, make yourself kind of an addition to the grid that people want to see. And I don't think he's done that. And I think that if that's happening and you're not performing at the same time, then I think you're in trouble. And I don't know how, from a marketing point of view, Williams might look at it and say, this guy's great for us, but I'm not convinced it is the case. So unless we see a big turnaround from him, sadly, top of my list would be Sargent, and then De Vries just below him.
Well said. I think if you're not adding value currently based on your drives, you have to be adding value from a marketability standpoint. And he's, as you said, not tapping into the American market as he should. He could be capitalizing and winning big here. And I don't feel that here so far this season.
And I totally get it from a point of view of, when you're a rookie, I imagine there's a lot, you want to focus on the racing, but at the same time, he came in at such a point when it just felt like he kind of fumbled the bag at the 1 yard line, as they say. You've got this great opportunity to be America's F1 driver. There was this huge push around Colton Herta, and the reason people in IndyCar love Colton Herta is because he's kind of, when you see him interviewed, he's kind of, he's an entertaining character. His results aren't always amazing, but he's a really entertaining character. Or you look at someone like IndyCar has this driver called Connor Daly, who I don't think's particularly good. I don't think he's ever won an IndyCar race, but people adore him. He's a really, he's got this huge fan base based on the fact that he's just likable, and that means sponsors like him, and the fact fans like him means they buy his merch and stuff like that. Very, very simple, but it keeps you around. Those are maybe clumsy comparisons, IndyCar to Formula 1, but I think Sargent really, has kind of missed a big opportunity there.
Lawrence, would you agree with those two picks?
Well, I think I'd start by saying I think this is actually the strongest field of drivers we've had for years and years in Formula 1. And this is a bit anecdotal, but the last 2 races, Monaco and Spain, we didn't even have a safety car, yellow flag. And that does speak to the standards of driving at the moment. So actually, if we look at drivers who have deserved to be booted out of F1 in the history of F1 and the drivers we have now, I think you've got 20 drivers who are actually doing a pretty good job. And when we're talking about rookies and 7 races in, whether they should be out of the sport. I think you have to look a little bit at what your expectations are of a rookie going into Formula One. It should be a really hard level of performance to be putting out week after week. There should be the possibility of mistakes. It should be that difficult, Formula One. That's, that is the very nature of it. But if you look at who Sargent replaced, Nicholas Latifi, and his performances so far, and okay, he's made mistakes, there's no doubt about it, but I think the overall potential of Sargent is far higher than it was at any point with Nicholas Latifi in the car. So I actually think that it would be pretty harsh if any of the 20 drivers got booted midway through the season, because I don't think any of them are doing or showing signs that they're going to be doing that bad a job by the end of it. You got to remember as well, these cars are not easy to drive. This new generation of F1 cars are run incredibly stiff, incredibly low to the ground, and that does induce errors even among some of the top drivers. We saw Lewis crash during a practice session in Monaco. We saw Checo Perez crash at the first corner in qualifying. And so, to see the rookies make some mistakes as well along the way, it's not perhaps that surprising. And really, to judge them before they've had, I would say a full season, but certainly 3/4 of a season does seem a bit harsh. So I don't know. I honestly don't think any of them deserve to be booted. If I was looking at it and just, pure speculation of what might happen, I'd say, if Checo continues to struggle as much as he is, he may look at the situation, and if it kicks off between him and Verstappen at some point and there's internal wrangling, well, then Red Bull have this, very well packaged, as we were talking about, marketable drivers. Daniel Ricciardo sat on the sidelines waiting to come in. And, and that's the other question you have to ask. If you're going to replace a driver, certainly mid-season, you need a very, very good replacement, because coming into a car with zero testing and getting the job done is very, very difficult. So, for any team to do that, they need to know that they've got a driver waiting in the sidelines who's going to do a better job. And at the moment, I can't think of any current drivers in reserve roles who are going to do a better job than the drivers in the main seat. And I'd probably include Ricciardo in that as well, as much as I'd love to see Daniel back in the sport.
He's supposed to test drive the RB19, I think, after or during Silverstone, I believe is what he had told us when we were down in Miami. But gosh, I know Sergio has made some gaffes, certainly some frustrating gaffes, but he's still consistent. I can't imagine if you switched him out for Daniel Ricciardo, you'd be getting better results from that second seat for Red Bull.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, Red Bull have said they think Ricciardo, since he has been in the simulator again, has kind of rediscovered his mojo. That's what Horner said, I think, almost word for word. And having spoken to Ricciardo, recently, I think it does seem like he feels that whatever bad habits he picked up at McLaren have gone. But that McLaren era was, it was so difficult seeing that. If you take Monza 2021 away, he really didn't impress at all. And I think it's such a risk to put him in that car, because, you think you're not getting the Daniel Ricciardo of 2018 or 2014. I think you probably think you're getting the Ricciardo of the McLaren era. And as Perez is showing, I think being Max's teammate now is probably the most difficult job in Formula One. And if you're already struggling for confidence, I don't think you're going to find confidence against him, because he's just going to be beating you most weekends quite comprehensively. So I think all of those things together, I think there'd still be a question mark around Ricciardo. But yeah, Perez is a weird one. I think, one or two good results and people stopped, will be fine again with him. But he comes to every weekend knowing that his best result should be his minimum should be a podium finish. Should be second place at this point, third maybe. So to not be finishing at least on the podium, it's a really, really bad result. So if that continues, if we get to the summer break and he's had a load more results like this, then I think that could be where we look at and start to think, is 2024 when he leaves? But yeah, to circle back to the original point, I don't know whether it would be an upgrade at this point to put Ricciardo in.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.